Welcome back to Upstart Epoxy, epoxy that you can trust. In this episode, we're going to be going over some of the basic simple steps for using all of our benchmark products, deep pour, tabletop, and art resin. We're going to cover a multitude of areas where you, as a beginner, can learn and get familiar and comfortable with using our products. So stick around and let's get going. So we decided to start off with deep pour. Deep pour is a 2-to-1 ratio epoxy that requires 2 parts of part A to 1 part of part B. Now when you're pouring deep pour, you're going to notice it's kind of watery. So you're going to want to make sure that if you're creating your own form, that you have the proper tools necessary to make sure that you don't get any leaks, folks. So I always recommend, if you're going to be using a wood form and creating your own, get you some good sheathing tape. You can get Sure tape, you can get Tuck tape, or you can even get Tyvek tape. Now these forms are pretty simple to make. You just want to make sure you get the base and all 4 corners that encompass the base. You want to tape them up really, really good. Make sure that you don't have any areas of the wood sticking out or showing underneath the tape. So you want to make sure that there's tape that covers the whole area. And it's really important, once you put this form together, to grab some handy dandy silicone. Silicone, what it does is it goes in and it clogs up all the seams in your form. You want to make sure that those seams are sealed up perfectly, because if not, you could have a chance of a leak and risk a really seriously big waste of money and waste of material. So silicone is essential, folks. You can use caulk. I've used bathroom caulk and window caulk, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I trust it more than I do silicone, because I don't. I've gotten a hold of some old caulk that I thought would work that I had just laying around my shed, and you know what? Once I applied it to the form, it didn't work. It never ever cured. So I had a pretty big mess on my hands. The next step we're going to do, and we're going to show you guys, is that whenever you're placing your wood into your form, whether it's an HDPE form like this one that we created here, or a homemade form using wood and tape, you can use heat glue or a hot heat glue gun to go ahead and place your pieces of wood to the form. You don't got to worry about it burning, or you don't got to worry about it damaging your form in any way. The cool thing about heat guns is that heat dissipates pretty quick as soon as it sticks to its product. Another thing you're going to need is stir sticks, folks, and a paddle mixer. I like to use stir sticks if I want to do a slow mix. And that's usually for tabletop, but we'll touch on that in a minute. For deep pour though, I always use my paddle mixer or paint mixer. That way I get a good even mix, and I usually mix for about 1 to 2 minutes. So the cool thing about deep pour, like I said, is it's really watery, so it goes a long way. Now, you're always going to need a heat gun or a torch. I have been using a heat gun for the past 5 years that I've been doing this, and it's never let me down. It's never failed me. I've never used a torch, but that's because I've never had to. The heat gun has always done whatever I've needed it to do. So get yourself a handy dandy heat gun or even a torch. Let's move on to tabletop epoxy. Generally, tabletop epoxy is used to coat your finished product. Usually, like if you do a river table or a charcuterie board that you start off using deep pour and you go through all the finishing process and stuff, and you don't want to sand it to like 300 grit and put oil on it. You want that glossy, sleek, sophisticated, contemporary glass look. Then you turn to tabletop. And with tabletop, you always want to mix it 1-to-1 ratio. And the cool thing about tabletop is that it cures a lot faster. But the thing with tabletop is you always want to warm it up, especially during the colder weather months. You want to warm it up for at least 30 to 40 minutes in front of a heater or something that's really warm. Just because the consistency is a lot thicker and more dense than, say, deep pour, which is, like I said earlier, a lot more watery. And with tabletop, you're going to see it's like mixing molasses a little bit. It's a lot thicker. But the cool thing about that is it provides an everlasting coat. It provides a coat that will endure the time. It's always good to elevate whatever you're going to be pouring tabletop on. We just showed you some painter's pyramids. Those are perfect for perching your piece up. That way they're not touching flush with whatever you're gonna pour your tabletop epoxy over. This keeps them raised and elevated. That way you can get a good overflow of your flood coat and make sure that you get the sides to it and everything comes out kosher, folks. Another thing to remember with tabletop epoxy when you're using it in this form is that it cures to the touch in about 24 hours. But it's not fully cured for 30 days. And by I mean fully cured, putting something over 500 degrees on it, withstanding scratches. So you still want to kind of baby your tabletop surface even after it feels like it's firm and cured and ready to be touched and used and worked. It's always a good rule of thumb to give it 30 days, folks, before you really put it through the test. Now let's move on to art resin. Art resin is a simpler form of tabletop epoxy, I like to say, because art resin can be used to make small little trinkets or little coasters or stuff like that. But the same stuff that you need for tabletop, you're gonna need with art resin as well. Always get you some handy dandy gloves, always. You can even get you some more of those painter's pyramids, and you always wanna coat whatever surface you're on with some rollaway plastic. Always make sure, because epoxy won't stick to plastic, and that's the best part of putting it over a table or whatever surface that you're going to use to create your project. It's always good to mix it up 1-to-1, just like tabletop, and you can do multi-pours, you can do different types of pours, you can even pour it up to 2 inches thick if you really want to, but you'd have to do that in layers. But the best thing I've found with using art resin is if you're gonna do if you get a piece of plywood and you wanna do some cool shapes like this here, or you wanna make your own countertop or something small like that, art resin is perfect for that, folks, because it's got a workable time of 35 minutes. So your best bet is to pour it on there and start manipulating it how you want it to look. It's gonna give you some time, it's gonna be forgiving, and most of all, it's gonna be fun to work with. We hope this video has been helpful, folks. Once again, it's Steve with Upstart, and we'll see you next time.